Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Ali Khan Clement John, and this is channel CQ97. If you are looking for discussions and lectures on topics concerning English language and literature, then you have certainly come to the right place. This video is the first in a series of lectures on a novel called The Reluctant Fundamentalist. Now, when we read a novel for enjoyment or for relaxation, that is actually a very informal matter. But when we look at a novel from an academic point of view or a critical point of view, as students have to do, then it's good to follow a certain method or a system. The first thing that we should do in that case is to find out things about the writer. As far as the Reluctant Fundamentalist is concerned, the writer is Mohsen Hamid. He was born in Lahore in the year 1971. He studied at Princeton University and Harvard Law School in the United States of America. The Reluctant Fundamentalist is his second novel. Mohsen Hamid lives in London. Then we look at the novel. Now, whenever we look at a novel, the first thing that we should go for is that look for the style. In this case, the style is that of a dramatic monologue. A dramatic monologue means that in the story we only meet one character, and that one character actually speaks to other characters, and through those exchanges we come to know about the others and we come to know about the events. The main thing is that only one person speaks. That is what a monologue really means. Then the style is ironic. When we say that the style is ironic, we mean that the writer has used irony as a technique of storytelling. Irony itself requires some detailed treatment, so there will be a separate lecture on that later on. Then we go towards the setting. Now, what is the setting of a novel? The setting of a novel is actually as to when does the story take place and where does the story take place. The when element is the temporal setting. This novel has been set a few years after the events of 9/11 as they happened in the United States of America. That is the temporal setting. The geophysical setting means where do the events of this novel take place. Well, actually, the main events only take place in Lahore, in Old Anarkali, at a pavement restaurant. But there are other events also, of course, but though we find out about those events through the events which happen in Lahore only. And then we come to the events, because of course a story is mainly based on its events. What happens in the story? So let's look at that. The main event is where the story begins. The story begins that Changez, that's the main character of this story. Changez is speaking to a foreigner who is an American, and they are both present at that pavement restaurant in Lahore. They don't know each other, and Changez is inviting that foreigner to have a cup of tea with him, and later on he'll invite him to have a meal with him also. Later on, we will go and find out that this meeting is not just by chance, but for the time being, it appears to be by chance. And Changez is the one who's speaking. So Changez, on finding out that this foreigner is an American, begins to tell him about his own American memories when he was studying in America. He tells how he was among the top students at Princeton University and also got a very prestigious job at Samson Underwood. And while studying over there in Princeton, Changez came across a girl called Erica. She was maybe a course mate or a classmate, but they did not really come to know each other that well in the United States. It is actually when these students, on their success in the exams and on finding jobs here and there, they went to celebrate on a vacation to Greece. And that is why you find the word Athens written over there in front of you, Athens being the capital city of Greece. What is remarkable that happened in Athens was that Changez, of course, got closer to Erica, but also he realized that his own American classmates were actually behaving rather proudly with the other people over there. Changez realized that American students considered themselves superior to all the other ones. So when he got back to America, he himself actually began to behave like that. And he was also very highly impressed by American technology. He actually began to act and even slightly behave like an American. During this time, he was sent on an assignment to Manila, which is in the Philippines. And over there, he found that the locals of that country disliked him, did not like him. And why they did not like him was that they found his American like behavior to be, something which they did not like. Then, when Changez completed his assignment in Manila, he was actually about to return to the United States. And watching television in a hotel, he saw what he thought was actually a film, but it was the news of the planes striking the World Trade Center towers. And Changez tells his American listener that his own first response to that attack was a smile. Now, I want you to keep this in mind because this is going to be a very important part of the themes when we discuss them as to why Changez, who was so very proud of himself being almost like the Americans, part of the American system, why did he smile? Why was he happy when he saw America under attack? This is a point which needs to be discussed in detail. Well, anyway, he returned from the Philippines. He returned from Manila, and in America, he saw that a change had come over the people of America. But the change which he really saw significant was that Erica, that girl, who had become so friendly with him, had actually become closer to him, friendlier. But she seemed to be suffering from some kind of depression, and that depression had become quite bad. I must mention here that Changez was not the first man in Erica's life. She had known another person, a boy called Chris. But Chris had died, he had passed away. So Changez noticed that whenever he and Erica were together, the memory of Chris was always between them. Changez also began to hear about the United States of America carrying out military missions all over the world in retaliation for the 9/11 attacks. But these were things which he saw from afar. He did not consider himself involved with these things in any way. The thing that he really noticed was that people around him were beginning to change their attitudes with him. His colleagues used to, be very friendly with him, but then some of them did not remain so friendly. And he also found that once in a while his car tires were cut when he came out from his office or when he came out from any shopping center. The one big change which really came across Changez also was when he saw that the United States of America had invaded Afghanistan. This is when he began to feel a personal involvement in the matters, because Afghanistan being a neighboring country of Pakistan, and Changez, of course, became concerned. And during this time, he came to Lahore. He came back home, met his people, his relatives, and he saw that Pakistan was then in danger of being attacked by India, and India was being supported by the United States. So you can understand that now Changez underwent a huge change. When he went back to America, he was sent on a mission, actually on an assignment, I should say, to the country called Chile, and there he met a man called Juan Bautista. Now, Juan Bautista actually told him about the Janissaries, and I'll just take a few moments and talk about that. The Janissaries actually are known in history as very, very fierce and efficient warriors. But the interesting thing about them is that they were in the Ottoman Empire, but did not actually, as a nation, belong to the Ottoman Empire. They belonged to nations which the Ottoman Empire had overcome, had defeated, and these young boys had been taken away to the Ottoman Empire, and there they were brought up like princes. Oh yes, they were given very good upbringing, and they were given very, very fine military training. But just keep in mind that these Janissaries fought for the Ottoman Empire and against the nations from which they themselves belonged. Now, Juan Bautista actually pointed out to Changez that he was like one of those Janissaries of history because he had been trained and educated in the United States of America and he was working for America. And at the moment, at that time in history, America certainly was fighting wars all over the world. So Changez felt, or at least it was brought home to him, that he was actually helping America to fight against his own nation. So that was the end of Changez's love affair with America. And then, of course, America's war on terror also came on scene in the world. And during this time, another tragedy happened, a personal tragedy for people. For that, Erica, she died. Erica had been deteriorating in a mental condition, and she was in a mental institution. And we're not very clear about this, but it seems that she committed suicide. These things will be discussed in detail when we discuss the characters. Changez came back from America. He left America and he came back to Pakistan. And when he came back to Pakistan, he became a political activist in Pakistan. And it is because of this reason now we realize that this American is here on a mission to, we actually don't know what, but he is here in connection with Changez being a political activist. We have reached the end of the story because the story ends that Changez and that American are moving towards the Pearl Continental where that American was staying. And then near the gates of the Pearl Continental, the American, he reached into his pocket or let's say into his coat, and it seems that he was reaching for a weapon, whereas Changez remarks that I think that you are actually reaching for your card holder or for your wallet. Now, this is a very unexpected ending. It's called an open-ended climax of the story, and we will be discussing this in detail later on. But these are the main events of the story as they happen.